These are the two non-pathway pathways of the golden path. And the pathway of quantum represents a quantum leap in consciousness. And the pathway of individuation, another way that you can see this is self-realization, self-actualization. And neither of these are actual pathways in the golden path. The pathway of the quantum is represented by these three lines here, one from the brand, one from the vocation, and one from the culture, all of which combine to generate the pearl. And the pathway of individuation is actually this pathway straight up the profile through the activation, the Venus, and the pearl sequence, moving from purpose to attraction to SQ to pearl to brand. And if you overlay the golden path over a human body, this runs right through the center channel, right up your spine into the crown of your head. Before I finish this out, I just want to say this is really the end for the content that I've wanted to make. I've done one for every single pathway. I've done one for each of the lines in every single sphere. I hope it has been helpful for you. And I'm still going to be in the Gene Keys space, but I'm feeling called to really talk about how to bring your higher purpose out into the world, how to use the pearl and start shifting the way that money moves across this planet. Start getting it into the hands of people that are going to do good with it. It's something that so many of you come and tell me that you want, and you just feel frozen. You feel stuck, like you can't make the leap. And I know that you can make the leap. So if you haven't seen those lines videos or the pathways or the spheres or the sequences, I've got playlists with all of that stuff. I'd love for you to check it out. I'm also going to invite you to come to our wisdom call. The next one is on Thursday, the 26th. It's at noon Eastern Standard Time. It goes about 2 hours and I do them every other week. They're totally free. And between these videos that I make and those calls, I really think it can get you started to singing through your brand, singing out your life's work. And I would love to see you there. So let's get into this pathway of the quantum, which again is represented by these three lines connecting brand, vocation, and culture to your pearl. And it is not linear, right? All of these other pathways, like from vocation to culture, this is the pathway of initiative. From culture to brand, the pathway of growth. From brand to vocation, the pathway of service. It's all a path, right? It's a line that we follow. But this, we see all three, this trinity, coming together in one. And it's because the quantum is a leap. It's putting your awareness somewhere totally different, somewhere where there is no linearity because there is no time. And that place is the causal plane. And we've gone, as we've kind of grown from a single-celled organism to a multi-celled organism, our awareness has changed and it has adapted over time. And there are these moments where quantum leaps occur. An example of this is when the ape brain turned into the human brain over the course of a couple 100,000 years. That makes zero sense logically, scientifically, from an evolutionary standpoint, but it happened. And it's because it was a quantum leap. When we went from having no life to having life, that is a quantum leap. We do not understand. It's a mutation. And those mutations are built into the process. So are they really a mutation? Something to think about. I just quickly want to touch on these colors here. So the dots that are in the middle, they represent the sequences that those spheres are a part of. So the green dots that you see here, that's activation sequence. These red dots are Venus sequence. These blue dots are Pearl sequence. In the purpose sphere here and the brand sphere, and actually there should be a red dot here too, I forgot. those are spheres where there's overlap in sequences. So purpose is part of the activation sequence and the Venus sequence. Your brand is part of the Pearl sequence and the activation sequence. And if you see up here, this is a map. This is the pathway of individuation. So this is tying together a lot of the things that we have learned thus far. And it is time, if you want to go any farther forward, seeing things in sequences needs to be let go of. We are no longer in the place of linearity. We are in the place of the quantum, of making these quantum leaps. And quantum leaps have a few different characteristics. So first and foremost, they are unpredictable. Nobody knows when something that seems so wild, like somebody donning the rainbow body, for example. If you've never heard of the rainbow body before, this is something that we have historical accounts of. It's mostly in the East, and it's people who have brought their awareness to such a point that the toroidal field of energy passing through them makes them appear to be almost translucent and have almost this rainbow color to them. And imagine the dawning of the rainbow body right now. Imagine that happened to somebody as consciousness raises in frequency, and clearly the collective is feeling something right now. How many of those people would it take for us to see the world in a totally different light? And that is what the quantum does. It gives us these unpredictable moments that can change everything in a flash. They are miraculous. They are an offering of grace. It's something that does not seem possible that all of a sudden happens. And this could be a capital M miracle, water to wine, or a lowercase m miracle, feeling the love that you have for your child. These small things that we just get too busy to recognize are tiny miracles spread out through our lives. And these are moments, potential for quantum occurrences. They're wormholes that can totally shift who we are and what we do and how we show up in the world. That's why when people have kids, their worldview changes and the things that open to them changes. And it's not just kids. It can be a marriage. It could be the change of a job. It's these big pivotal moments in our life that can lead to miracles as long as you have the eyes to see them. And these quantum shifts are all contained in our DNA. They are inside of us. We know, we can see the future. We are obsessed with flying, right? Superheroes, they fly, a lot of them. And the reason for that is because there is this moment in our future that I can just feel in my heart where we are going to be able to fly. And I don't know that it is this physical body. In fact, I'm almost positive it is not. But that is just deeply coded into our DNA, and therefore it is an archetype that we resonate with so deeply. Logic leads to one place. If you continually follow logic, it can only get us so far. There's this famous saying that scientists have, which is, we can tell you how the world works if you give us just one miracle. And that miracle that they're referencing there is the Big Bang. All of a sudden, something came from nothing. And nobody can explain that. So logic takes us right to the edge, but always terminates in paradox. There is no way that your logical brain can get you to truth. It is not designed to be that way. The universe is not designed to be understood. So let it go. It's designed to be felt. It's designed to be explored. It's designed to be trusted. It's designed to be seen. It's designed to be loved. It's not designed to be thought through. And what happens when you get to this paradox and you are able to let go instead of needing to figure it out, which is where we are right now as humanity? We need to figure it out. And the fact that we are trying to figure out these paradoxes is what stops us from feeling the miraculous. So by letting go, that is how we trigger the miracles that are hidden within our very DNA. And there are two cities that I want to talk to you about that are in the Gene Keys. So if you're new to the Gene Keys, there's what's called the shadow state, which is kind of the lower energy, lower vibration expression of a given energy. There's the gift, which is the creative expression of that same energy. So we're not trying to get away from the shadow. That energy is useful to us. We just don't know how to work with it yet. When we know how to work with it, we're able to pull the creativity from it. And then finally, coming almost in a quantum leap, is the siddhi, the divine expression of that same energy. And there are two that I really want to talk about, both of which, interestingly enough, I have in my profile. So the 35th gene key, whose siddhi is boundlessness. And boundlessness, the shadow there is hunger. The gift is adventure, and then it opens into boundlessness. And boundlessness means that anything is possible. We have no edges, nothing to keep us trapped or stuck. We can expand endlessly out into the world. And because of that, we get to break the laws of this universe. We are boundless, which opens us to the miraculous. We can fly. We have X-ray vision. All the Marvel movies, all the superheroes. The 35th is a miracle siddhi because it lets us do things that we think of as miracles, but you only get there with the right combination of archetypes within your DNA, which are just different gene keys in the right placements, and it needs to come from divine grace. In other words, in the right timing. But if you believe that that's possible, then it can and will eventually happen. The other siddhi that I want to talk about is the 60th siddhi, which is the siddhi of justice. And this 60th is all about balance. And if you watch the last video that I did, which was about the pathway of service, you know that I talked about the idea of gravity against levity. So if there is gravity, a devolutionary force, a force that pulls us down and back and is heavy, there must be a counterforce because of this justice, because of divine balance. There has to be a other side. And that is levity, something that lifts us up, something that allows us to move through the universe in a different way. And we don't understand it yet. But again, the 60th is this opportunity for a miracle to happen. And quantum leads to another thing that we often talk about in the gene keys, which is what's called absorption. And absorption is one of the trinities that the gene keys are so fond of. And basically, we go from contemplation to absorption, and then that absorption takes us to embodiment. So this is the path of how things happen. So there is this quantum leap that happens in our consciousness that is brought to us from divine grace. And the way that we allow space for that to happen is with the act of contemplation. And if you're unfamiliar with contemplation, really only two things are required here. Number one is time and space. In other words, being empty, being still, finding a pause. The other thing that's required for contemplation is some sort of subject matter. So that could be a word, it could be a phrase, it could be an image that you have in your head. And all you do is you take a pause, you take a moment, you hold that image, that word, that phrase so loosely in your brain. And by doing that contemplation, a quantum leap can occur out of nowhere. It doesn't make any sense, this thing that you're rolling around. And all of a sudden, in this flash and something that seems like it's not you, because it isn't, this moment of absorption happens. You suck in this new way of seeing, this new idea, this new belief, this lens for viewing the world. And in that moment, everything changes. You see everything with new eyes, and that leads to embodiment. It leads to you then acting that way in the world. There is a very big difference between I believe something to be true and embodying that truth, acting it out. You believe it so much that you're willing to put your money where your mouth is. That ultimately is what the Gene Keys are asking you to do, and what every spiritual teacher and every spiritual system is asking you to do. Will you take the leap and trust? Because you believe that there is a force that supports you. And I know a lot of you believe that. But if you are not taking actions aligned with it, then it is not a truth for you. And the only way I know to make it a truth is to take the action and watch what happens. You will be shocked what comes from the unknown if you are willing to take that leap. Now, where embodiment leads us, I'm going to write it down here. Embodiment takes us, this might be a little bit of a letdown for some of you guys, to the ordinary. It brings us back into the real world. It stops all the seeking. Once we are embodied, we get the joke. And the seeking comes to an end. Think about what a relief that might be. What a relief it was and is for me. I'm just now settling into this deep, deep truth. And what I've been able to do is to just return to my everyday life, to show up for my kid when she needs it, to help my partner when she needs it, to give my services to people when they need help, to give my money to people when I have it and I can. It's returning to the garden, learning how to cook again. Just the basic things, that now becomes where we find the beauty, where we find spirituality, where we find grace. There is nothing to be done. There's only this place of enjoyment, this place of content and peace. And when you get to this place of no seeking, then and only then does the pearl dawn in your profile. The pearl is a harvest. It is what you get to bring in from all of this hard work that you did moving through your hologenetic profile. It's the gift that you get from the quantum universe, from the causal plane, from that soul place. But you're so busy seeking that it can't get here. And there's nothing wrong with this. And there's no stopping it until it's time to stop it. If you are still driven to seek, you cannot just say, I'm done seeking. You have to burn it through. You have to keep going until you get to this place where you are exhausted. And it will come. And it will come for everybody at different times. And once you get to that place, you get to return home. And what you'll find is that pauses become more important to you, become greater than content. Meaning that the not doing, the taking it in, the seeing the beauty becomes more important than the doing, than the creating, than the filling of your five senses. You need to smell and taste and hear. All of that becomes less important because we know that it is this external pull out of our center. It's a distraction away from the spiritual world, and there's nothing wrong with that distraction. We are half human, half spirit. But it's important as you interact and engage with those things that you remember the half spirit. It's so easy to forget. And when this starts to happen, it leads to rhythm and flow. Nature works in cycles. We are designed to work in cycles. And when you take these pauses often, you can feel when it's time to downshift, downregulate, lean into the pause for even longer, or when it's time to turn it on and go and do, because there are times for both. It's about finding the balance. And that rhythm is what gives us flow. We stop forcing and we start having fun. We're not exhausted all the time. We get this rest through our pauses. And that takes us to this journey of individuation, which again, activation, Venus, Pearl, all of it is included here. And the journey of the golden path is individuation. It is about merging your inner world with your outer world. So when your inner reality equals your outer circumstances, that is how you know that you have walked this path of individuation. And it's things like your dreams, your relationships, your health, your finances, your spirituality, all of it. All of this bucket is a match in here versus what's showing up in the outer world. And it feels so good when it starts to align. And it will make you realize that all of these things, the key to all of them, and for this match to happen, is simplicity. None of this is supposed to be complicated. It's not supposed to be hard, and it doesn't need to be. The pearl is a reminder to keep it simple. Because it is in the simplicity that we can slow down, that we can come into trust, that we can notice all the things that God is trying to get us to notice along our journey. And externally, it may be a letdown to know that simplicity is the home, that the return to the ordinary is the home. We're on this spiritual quest and we want fireworks. We want the halo. We want an explosion of light. And sometimes that comes and sometimes it doesn't. So if you're feeling like, oh man, I thought that this was different. I thought this was going to be this big thing. Know that bliss is in the subtle. It's not in the millions. It's not in the mansions. It's not in the ocean. It's not on the mountains. It's in the little tiny things. The cooking breakfast for my daughter this morning and remembering to cut off the crust and seeing her face, even at 13 years old, that she can see that I care and that I love her. That was a moment of bliss just this morning. So now I'm going to go through this pathway of individuation here, one sphere at a time, and we're going to talk about it. I'm going to tell you a little story. So it starts down here at the base of your profile, at the base of your spine, with the sphere of your purpose. And your purpose is coming into your way of being in the world. Your purpose has everything to do with the flavor of consciousness that you bring to things and nothing to do with the things that you're actually doing. And this purpose is part of both the activation sequence and the Venus sequence. So the activation sequence, we come into our purpose through our relationship with God, through trust, through this deep returning to innocence into our belly, into our root, the base of our spine. And from the base of our spine, that is where we can begin this journey. When we have our stability, our core stability, when we know that we are safe and protected, or at least believe that on a deep, deep level, even though it might not be confirmed yet, we're willing to act like it is a truth. And in acting like it's a truth, that's what's going to allow it to become something that you know with certainty. Because the circumstances of synchronicity are going to bring about the things that you need for that belief. And that brings us to our next sphere here, which is the sphere of attraction. So this sphere is tied to the Venus work. It's tied intimately to your dharma and to your karma. It calls in the people, places, and things that serve your soul's mission and purpose, the contract that you signed this time around. And it allows you to clear your karma from this life and from your other lives. And so once we've settled in and we've become stable, our sphere of attraction begins to call in the things that allow us to go into the next steps of the process. That's why this pathway of individuation is so vital. It is our driver of our life force through this main energy channel of our body. And coming out of this sphere of attraction, we come to the sphere of our SQ. So after these things are called into us, our SQ represents the openness of our heart. So we have this opportunity to accept, to show love, to return non-love with love, all the things that our soul is calling into our lives. And when we can approach all of those things with an open heart, with trust, with grace, it totally changes what our world looks like. It starts internally by doing the internal work, right? By going through your IQ, which is a pattern that you brought on from 14 to 21 and unwinding it, and then going to your EQ, the pattern that you brought on to 14 and unwinding that. Then we get to our SQ, 0 to 7 years old. We unwind that. We see the world with new eyes, and we're able to trust that our heart can handle anything that comes our way because we called it in for a reason. And we know that as long as we hold a high frequency and a high intention, that your heart is always going to be able to handle whatever is called into you. Coming out of this sphere of the SQ, then we get into the sphere of our pearl. And I already talked about this one. This is the harvest. This is a re-entry into life in a new way, right? There's a fool that comes into the world. If you know the tarot, the fool is the first card and the fool is the last card, but the fool at the beginning is very different from the fool at the end. It's the reason that young people and old people have this affinity for one another. It's why the relationship between a grandparent and a grandchild is so close. They're both fools. But this fool is a fool because there is no knowing, there is no awareness. This fool is a fool because there is ultimate knowing and ultimate awareness. The end always brings us back to the beginning. And the pearl is that return. Coming out of the pearl, then we get to the sphere of our brand, which is also the sphere of your life's work. And this is our soul's expression, our soul's voice. So we take this pathway of individuation that we've walked and we share it in service to the whole. And we begin to help other people walk this pathway of individuation. We begin to spread love, to spread awakening, to spread courage. Pick a city and use your voice, use your expression to share that with the world. And as individuation occurs, as we walk individuation, T-I-O-N, ran out of time. As we walk this path, which goes both directions, it's not one way or the other way, what you will feel is the living wisdom that is the Gene Keys. The Gene Keys are a living wisdom. They are a transmission. They are not something that Richard Rudd created. They are something that was given to him. And when you work with this system for long enough, you can feel that in the core of your being. In Tibet, there's this idea of what's called a terma. And a terma is just and I'm not pronouncing that well at all, but it's just a wisdom teaching. This is a word, another word, or it translates as treasure. So this is a teaching, a wisdom that was concealed when it came through with a design to be activated later, when the collective was ready to receive it. And the Gene Keys are a terma. They are a living wisdom that has been around for at least 1,000 years. And Richard is the one that got to receive the teaching. He is what's called a chodak, another Tibetan word, and they are the lineage holders of this transmission. I would consider myself a chodak of the Gene Keys because it's just something that resonates on a soul level. I can feel it so deep, and I think that's what comes across when I do these videos, and that's what you guys can feel. This is the system that got me to this pathway of individuation. It's not the system I'm going to be with forever. That is a limitation. Systems are here so that you can move beyond the system. It is a tool that I will use with people, but ultimately your Gene Keys aren't about understanding your Gene Keys. Remember, logic gets us to paradox, which we must release to find miracles. And so it's helpful language, it's helpful to talk about, it's helpful to do, and we need a linear path so that we can let go of the linear path. So no matter where you are on the journey right now, that is okay. But what I can see is that once you're here, it's time to loosen your grip. It's time to shift things. Again, not letting go, but using it in a different way. And in my opinion, a lineage holder, a Chodak, not just of the Gene Keys, of any wisdom teaching, has a responsibility to embody that wisdom. You don't need to talk about it. You don't need to share it, because by embodying it, people will just see and they will know that something is different. And that responsibility ultimately leads or helps other people to get to self-illumination. These truths are within you. They're within me. And so I feel this responsibility to help you to see that and know that and understand, and to help pull it out of you so that you can show up in service to the world, so you can share your message, your soul's brand. And that leads us all the way back to contemplation, where this all began. That's how we find the quantum. And on the tail end, it takes us back to how we find self-illumination, which gives us the responsibility to be and share of and in this world. Okay, that feels like it for today. Thank you guys for being here with me. I hope this one was helpful. If you have anything that you want me to do next, please let me know. Because like I've said, we've finished it. We've done it all. I could continue to come up with things, of course, but I don't know if that's of the greatest service. So again, come to the Wisdom Call if you're able. Next one's on the 26th. Thank you for being here. Until next time.